Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It is great to see you, and we have got an awesome episode of The View from the Top today. We've got so much going on. The green room is full to bursting. It's so exciting, but you know how it works. Tell us that you're out there. I want to know how many people. I'm hoping for record numbers today on our show. So join the conversation, write in the box, tell us who you are, where you're coming from, what's on your mind. Just let us know you're there. To be honest, it's the only way we know who's in the audience, and it's the only way you know who else is in the audience. So share, your friends will be there, your colleagues will be there. Let us know who's out there. I can see the numbers coming in already, which is just absolutely great. So let me tell you about, I'm going to keep my introduction short because there's so much to talk about. Let me just tell you about what we've got on the show today and what we've got coming up in future weeks. On the show today, and I expect you know that, and I expect that's why you're out there already, we've got The View from the Top meets the women of global mobility. And I'm delighted we've got 4 inspiring female mobility leaders. We've got Rina Montalvo from Newscorp. We've got Debbie Convery from Peloton. We've got Becky Woods from ADP. And we've got Gallia Peretz from Weichert. So this is going to be an awesome episode. And we're going to be talking about women in mobility, and not just women in mobility. We're going to be talking about women on assignment and how women in mobility can help women on assignment. So a lot to be talking about there. It's going to be a great show, and I'm really looking forward to it. Let me see who's out there. Oh my God, comments are coming in from all over the place. We're getting from Dallas, from California, from New Delhi, from Michigan, from, more and more of these coming up. It's such an important topic. As Marianne says, I love this topic. It's a big topic we're talking about today. And as I said, we've got just so much to be doing. But one thing is, not only do you get a great topic like this, you actually also get credits. You get GMS credits, you get CRP credits, you get HRCI credits, and you get SHRM credits. So if you want the credits, we're going to be releasing the codes about 45 minutes into the show. So keep watching the show, and you'll be able to get your codes for your ERC credits, your GMS, your CRP, your HRCI, or indeed your SHRM credits. What about future weeks? Well, obviously today we're talking about the women of global mobility. Our tech show next week, the 12th of May, is a glimpse into the future. And we're going to get together with a panel, and we're going to our crystal ball out, or maybe that should be a silicon ball. And we're going to be looking into both the near future and the far future. What can technology really do to change mobility, both in the medium term and the longer term? It's going to be a fascinating show. And then, of course, the 19th of May, well, the 19th of May is a big day. The 19th of May, which is just 2 weeks' time, is going to be the big reveal. Do you remember that? The top 100, we did the top 100 corporates. Now we're doing the top 100 service providers. Let me just remind you of what that's all about. So that's it. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to be revealing the top 100 service providers in the world. Fabulous show we've got lined up for you in 2 weeks' time. But let's get cracking with today's show. Now, the big Benevo move, the big Benevo news is that Matt has moved. We said that we were moving Matt to Palo Alto to open an office there, and we've been crowdsourcing his move. Well, today, Matt has actually boarded the flight. He's arrived in Palo Alto, and we're going to talk about the immigration, the tax aspects of that move as we crowdsource Matt's move. So let's give a big old-fashioned view from the top shout out. So you know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the applause button, hit the heart button, and let's find out how Matt's move went. Matt, you've got there. You must be missing the family.
I'm on Pacific time and missing my immediate family, and also enjoying seeing my immediate family. I haven't seen my mother for a very long time.
Okay, we're getting a lot of love out there from the audience, and many congratulations on your move. Tell us about it. I mean, I haven't taken an international flight in, well, I know you have, Julia, but most of us haven't taken an international flight in, well, forever. You know, there might be some domestics, but not international. What was it like? Tell us about your actual flight experience.
I will. I highly recommend it. I would highly recommend to anybody getting over the last little bit of fear about traveling internationally, because it is a joy at the moment. There's nobody in the airports. There's nobody on the planes. You are solo, moving around as you wish. You're being waited on a 787 with just you, a couple friends, and 6 or 7 flight attendants. It's very nice. So I was a little bit nervous about it, to be honest, but you're also feeling safe because everybody's had a negative COVID test, and everyone is wearing masks, and everyone is sanitizing their hands, and so it feels clean and proper. It was great. There was no hiccups whatsoever, and it was. I hope it stays the same for a while, to be honest.
Matt, did the domestic flight feel any different than transatlantic?
Oh well, I haven't done a domestic flight yet. Okay, but I may soon. So yeah,
I hear it's more crowded, is what I've heard.
Oh right, so maybe international is the secret corner of the travel sector at the moment.
So Matt, let's talk about the immigration and tax aspects of this. Things we've got 2 of the leading experts in the world free at our disposal. So let's just talk. Yes. What about you've arrived? You've got a quarantine. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So I am. I'm quarantining at my mom's house in Napa, California, before going down to Palo Alto next week. And so I'm respecting the 7-day quarantine, and I have actually arrived and immediately gone for my vaccine shot number 1. So I got that yesterday, and the next one in 3 weeks' time. But so I thought the quarantine rules were universal across the United States, but I believe that there's a detail there that is important to understand.
Yes, I think that's a great point to start, actually, because the quarantining rules are different state by state, and some states like New York have recently relaxed the rules, but it's really important that you check like you did before you went. So that was a good thing. Also, it might be worth saying a couple of things about the US travel ban, because as everyone knows, that was introduced by President Trump, and that covers all the Schengen countries, Ireland, the UK, Brazil, Iran, China. And then President Biden has extended that to South Africa, and only this week to India. And it's not nationality, it's physical presence. And I think
Matt would have been subject to that proclamation.
Matt would have been subject to that proclamation. Well, because
as a US citizen, you're not, but your family is.
Yes, he came in on it.
So maybe I could clarify an important detail about this with you, Julia. So it is my current understanding that the mother of my children, I'm going to say wife for easy, but yeah. So technically we're not married, but she is the mother of U.S. citizens. So it's my understanding that she can come in the country.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
The mother of U.S. citizens under 21 is fine. I was really thinking more of your mother-in-law. And
yes. So after my experience was very good traveling, now her family is a little bit more interested in considering a visit later on this year.
Yes. So just for them, it's physical presence in a country is enough. So if they transited through a country, obviously if they're coming from Spain, they're in the country. But even if they, transited through a company on the list, and there was, there's quite a generous waiver before, which I think is relevant to the audience when they're looking at people who are needing to come on business. So it was a US national interest waiver, and we were getting a lot of people through. And I wanted to just do a shout out to Charlotte Slocum, because she heads our consular practice in Europe, and she made a lot of successful applications. But they actually tightened the rules on the 3rd of March. And so it's much harder to make an economic argument. And really what we're finding is that if you're a CFO or an executive, it's very difficult now to get in under a waiver. Whereas if you're actually a doer, an engineer, then that's easier. So what people are doing is they're either going for a nice holiday to Mexico. So that's something we could recommend to your in-laws. Have a nice holiday in Mexico for 14 days. And then they would be coming from Mexico. So the US travel ban wouldn't apply. Or people are actually turning up, making an application at the custom and border entry. And lots of places in America were being very nice, particularly for humanitarian reasons, but now it's actually only Atlanta. So that is another option for people who are very desperate to go, and there's humanitarian reasons, and they can't actually do the 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know where you stand from an immigration perspective, Matt, is that right? You've got any questions for Julia you want to ask?
Yes, no, I have a good question. So
people watching the show at the moment, which is awesome. So they're all going to be poring over your personal circumstances here. We will allow you a little bit of discretion.
Right. So Julia, tell me this. So I'm on kind of a scouting mission because my son is still finishing his school year, and they're going to come shortly following me in just in about a month and a half. And so we looked at various ways of bringing, of having everybody come in. So the kids are U.S. citizens, so I understand that's fine. Hope nothing's changed there. But we looked at different pathways for Blanca. One being a green card, and we were hit with the news that was going to take 18 months to 3 years. So that seemed like a crazy period of time. The next option that we were looking at was, of course, she can come to begin on a NESTA, but then she would have to go back and change it to something else. But we were considering having her come as a long stay visitor. Which one of those would you advise? Yeah.
So we've talked about it, but before. But the green card issue is obviously a problem if you're not married. But then we were all very happy to announce your wedding and engagement. So
it's coming on the next show.
It's going to be the first
coming on the next show, live proposal. But definitely not recommending under any circumstances applying for a sort of B visa, because there is a presumption that someone who's married to a US citizen would be an intending immigrant. And the ESTA is fine, but you have to be very careful about the frequency of your trips. If you are married, though, although the green card process, as you say, can take 15 to 18 months, you can actually apply it under exceptional circumstances, and you could apply, from an embassy overseas. So you could do it from the US Embassy in Madrid, and you can get that down to 4 to 6 months.
Okay, good to know. I have another question that maybe would transition to something I also wanted to ask Pat, which is that another option that she has to be here is to be here as a research scholar due to her profession, and that's a J2 visa, and then that led into a different question about filing and our status of a family unit not married, and how I actually have to do that, because I'll have to be getting into filing this year, and she would be either filing herself or filing jointly, I'm not sure, next year. So Pat, would you be able to help us on that?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of issues to unpack here. I mean, you still have some Spanish tax issues potentially, her still being there, and then, finishing up tax residency in Spain. And then to your question, what happens on the US side? So you being a US citizen, you've always been filing. I presume you've been filing status single, maybe head of household.
Yes.
Because you have the 2 kids. Those 2 kids, by the way, for tax purposes, a pretty good deal. You're getting $4,000 of tax credits off of them on your U.S. tax return. At least that, probably even more so for this year, 2021. But how do you file? So you've been filing. You're a U.S. citizen. While you've been working in Spain, you've been claiming foreign tax credits for Spanish taxes paid. You've potentially been claiming an exclusion for foreign earned income outside the US. And so that'll transition for 2021. You'll have roughly 5 months in Spain, roughly 7 months in California. And so now you are a US domestic employee. I assume that you're working on getting payroll and all that fun stuff set up.
Yep.
And so for Blanca, so she is, for U.S. tax purposes, a non-resident alien at the moment. Okay. Yes. If you guys get married and go down the green card path, that means she's a permanent resident and would be a U.S. taxpayer subject to worldwide income, kind of like you. If you don't, and she gets the J2 visa, then you probably are looking at she becomes U.S. tax resident at the point in time, she meets the days threshold, and it's a complicated formula, but it's based on presence in the U.S. So depending on when she arrives in 2021, if it's in the second half of the year, that's less than 183 days. So maybe not yet a resident for 2021. Maybe
July.
Right. So, you're right on the cusp there. And then she would be, another domestic employee of the research institute, whatever, and declaring her income separately. Again, depends on what you do in terms of getting legally married. You would then potentially might be able to get a joint filing. So as of the end of 2021, if you are legally married, you would have the option to consider filing jointly. It's a complicated process in the year of transfer because you have options. You can file separately, you'd be doing your thing, she'd be doing hers, or you could file jointly. But if you do jointly, you have to look at the whole 12 months. So it would pull in all of Blanca's earnings in Spain, which maybe not is so painful because like you as an American expat, you'd get foreign tax credits, maybe a foreign earned income exclusion. Maybe those Spanish earnings don't really hurt your U.S. tax position and would give you the benefit of filing jointly, which gives you a little bit better tax rates, et cetera.
I think in summary, what Pat and I are saying is
big decisions to make in the next couple of months.
Propose immediately and have more children.
Absolutely. And the audience is going to go mad when they.
I hear nothing but benefits about that.
I'm going to finish up this section now because we want to get on to talk about the women of global mobility. But I think what that very brief conversation has shown is that there are some very interesting issues, technically challenging issues, I think, coming out even from what looked like on the face of it, the straightforward move of a US citizen back to the US.
Yeah. And I only scratched the surface. Matt, make sure you check your Spanish residency because there is no concept of a part-year resident. You either are full year for resident for the year or you are non-resident. So you're right on the cusp at the midpoint of the year that could go either way. So
all right. Well, for the purpose of continuing shows, I think the maximum amount of complexity is the best.
Well, we try to keep it common. But Matt, first of all, from everybody, many congratulations on your move, and it's nice that you're with your mom just in time for Mother's Day as well. So
that is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Okay, so Pat, Julia, Matt, it's been great having you on the show. What we're going to do now is going to move on to our special guests, the women of global mobility. Amazingly, we've got over 300 people live on LinkedIn and more on Facebook and YouTube. So everybody put your hands together and let's bring on the women of global mobility. And that is Becky Woods, Debbie Convery, Rina Montalvo, Deb Convery, and I've forgotten somebody, and Gallia Peretz, of course. Right, so let's bring them all on. LinkedIn is going mad. It's going wild. It is so exciting to have you all here. We've got Rina Montalvo from Newscorp. We've got Becky Woods from ADP. We've got Deb Convery from Peloton. And of course, we've got Gallia Peretz from Weichert. It's a power panel. It's the women of global mobility. And you may have noticed that I might not be the right person to be moderating this panel. No mansplaining is coming from this side of the pond. I'm going to hand over to you, Gallia, and let's have some real girl power conversation. And I want to make sure we're talking about women in mobility, but also women on assignment. And let's get into that. So, Gallia, first I'll start with you. Welcome to the show, and I'm throwing the ball over to you.
Thank you for having me, Brian. Thank you, everyone. It's so great to see all the love out there. I'm so happy to be joined by such amazing ladies on this panel today. So let's start by saying, there's been a lot of talk of 2020 being the she session and how the pandemic has reversed decades of progress towards gender equity. But at the same time, we've had some amazing moments where we've seen women like Kamala Harris become the first female U.S. vice president, Sarah Thomas in the sporting world, and all of that has been just so inspiring. So we're going to have a really authentic discussion today about our experiences in mobility and in the corporate world. We're really excited to hear your insights, ladies. And before we get into the discussion, Brian, we'd like to play a short clip from Kate Abdo, who's a sports presenter and a Newscorp expat that Rina personally moved. So I'll let you play that clip.
Okay, let me give a bit of background to this. This is Kate Abdo. That's her. She's a sports presenter, as you said. She's someone that Rina moved. But in this particular clip you're going to hear, we're talking about a woman called Stephanie Frappart. Now, Stephanie Frappart is probably not somebody you know, but Stephanie Frappart hit the headlines because she was the first woman to referee a Champions League soccer match, which obviously is a really big thing. And Kate Abdo said this about Stephanie Frappart, and I'll just play this clip.
Listen, me personally, I'm not a referee and I don't strive to be one. So does it matter to me that Stephanie Frappart will referee a men's game on the biggest stage? Yes, it does. It matters to me as a woman who's looking for acceptance in men's professional sports and feeling validated by another woman being told that she is amongst the best, male or female. It also matters to me as a woman wanting to set an example for other young girls who love this game and let them know that despite the fact that they may look at football's governing bodies and boardrooms and not see themselves reflected, change is coming. Should it only matter to me because I'm a woman too? No. It should matter to all the fathers out there whose daughters want to achieve, not only in sport, but want to achieve, period. It matters that your daughters see women creating paths that will in turn make their path more walkable. 2020 is the year that it matters to be a girl dad. It is the year that a global shutdown forced many men to be at home and understand why they say a woman's work is never done.
Such a powerful clip and message. Rina, you've moved Kate. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your experience moving her and your own journey. Talk to us about your journey in the corporate world and mobility.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. Kate Abdul, Kate is a British sports broadcaster. She works for Champions League. She moderates for soccer, major soccer, and also boxing events. So you have a woman who is a moderator and a host for major soccer and boxing events. Just think about that, boxing. Kate, has lived in the UK, Spain, France, Germany. Currently, she's in the US. She works for Fox, Turner, CBS, and ESPN. So, that's really, when we're speaking about women in mobility, she's really a woman that has moved everywhere, is, breaking the glass as well, as we all say. She's in sports where women are not usually involved. As a moderator, usually you would have boxing, you would have a whole bunch of men moderating it, and Kate is a key moderator in these events. She also interviews with, and speaks in shows with Ronaldo and Messi. So it's just amazing everything she's done and achieved, and it's been a pleasure working with her. As myself, she also speaks a lot of languages, multiple languages, as I do. I as well have lived in Puerto Rico, the US, Germany, and the UK. So we have a lot of parallels. And I think that's also why not only was she my expat, but she's now a dear friend.
That's incredible. Do you have a favorite language to speak, Rina?
So, it's funny because when we meet up, right now I'm in LA, and she's in LA as well. Right now she's in the UK. But, when we meet up and we don't want people to understand what we're saying, we're switching between English, Spanish, and German. So it's exciting. So I think the favorite languages for us, I would say English, Spanish, and German.
That's great. Moving on to you, Deb. You've actually had your own expat experience, and we'd love to hear about that and also your own journey. You've recently started with a new organization, and your journey in the corporate world and in mobility. Can you share with us about that?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gallia. And I just have to say that video, like every time I watch it, it gives me chills. Being a huge football fan as well, but watching what Kate is doing kind of just from a broadcasting perspective, but what some of these women are doing in sports is just so inspiring. So excited to be here. So a little bit about my journey. So I started in mobility about 10 years ago after spending the first half of my career in talent acquisition. I stumbled into the function like most of us. The minute I remember my first conference call with a couple of different people in different countries, and I like instantly fell in love. I've been very fortunate to work for some pretty cool brands, T-Mobile, Amazon, Nike, and just very recently moved to Peloton, which is just a dream come true. I'm just in love with the brand, and got my bike in 2019. So it's really great to be there and to build the mobility program. As you mentioned, when I was at Amazon, I spent almost 2 years in Luxembourg. We went there in 2012 with my husband, my accompanying spouse, and my children, who were 10 and 8 at the time. My husband had his own company and stayed in the US for about 6 months with our kids so that they could finish the school year. So I went out early, was there for 6 months on my own, and it was total role reversal, right? Like I was in charge of our move. I was also kind of starting a new job out there on my own. I got to be honest, it was a little bit of a challenging 6 month initially of our transition, especially for my husband and son. It was really hard with my husband's business. He had just started a new business. And it was, I think the experience just gave me a whole new level of empathy of how, difficult this can be, especially for females, kind of, being in a new role and kind of being, in charge of the move and kind of managing all of the family affairs. Fortunately, I have to say, and those that know my husband know, like he is an absolutely equal partner and was amazing in the whole move and was really supportive of my career to move out there. We ended up moving back earlier than when we had anticipated because he needed to be back stateside, but it was really just an awesome experience. And fun fact that I have to share, while I was in Luxembourg working for Amazon, one of the expats that I supported, her name is Mariana. She is now the Chief Business and People Officer at Peloton, and she played a role in helping me come to Peloton. So it's really cool to kind of have that connection with a former expat.
Wow, what a nice way to tie it all in, that experience and having that connection. Was there anything during your experience that surprised you the most?
You know, honestly, it humbled me, and that it surprised me because I thought I was an expert at relocating, and I was born in the UK, so have a lot of European roots. So does my husband. I didn't think it would be that challenging. So what surprised me was that it was challenging, and it humbled me though at the same time. Even though you can be an expert in theory, you know, when it comes to application, it's not always kind of the same. And again, I think it really has helped me in my professional career, just having that experience and that extra level of empathy of how difficult it can be.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Becky, you actually had your own self-assignment in Costa Rica. Tell us about that, and then also your own journey in the corporate world and mobility.
Great. Thanks, Gallia. Yeah, like Deb said, it's so interesting to hear other people's stories and how did they get into mobility, because it's so varied. And at a time in my life, right after undergrad, I was about 22 years old, and I was going through the whole, what do I want to do with my life journey? And I had majored in Spanish in undergrad, double major with pre-law. I had already tried out the law path. I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. And I said, well, I'd like to practice my Spanish, and maybe I'll like teaching. So why don't I go figure that out? And I decided to actually move down to Costa Rica, where I could both try teaching English as well as learning Spanish. And I set up my own home finding trip. My family decided to take a vacation down there. I stayed an extra week. I looked around at different schools. I went into a school cafeteria, an English school, and I saw some Americans, and I went and sat down with them and said, oh, what do you do? What do you do? How do you get here? Where do you live? And I made a connection with one of them. And what ended up happening was when I moved to Costa Rica, he vacated the house where he was living, and I was able to take his spot. So I had a very successful home finding trip. And I managed to get a job and get my work visa. And the experience was wonderful, because years later, now in my corporate role, whenever I move people, I say, you know, I did what you're doing. I did it by myself. You have a company supporting you. Don't worry, you'll be just fine. If I did it on my own, you can do it. But it definitely made me, like Deb said, appreciate the experience that our transferees go through, and gave me a love for it. And that's definitely what led to what I do now.
That's incredible. Do you think, Becky, do you think the time of when you went through that experience and how you thought about it then you would have thought about it differently, or felt differently now, today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like I said, at that time in my life, I was 22. I didn't yet have a partner. I didn't yet have children. I didn't yet feel like, oh, I quickly need to find a partner and have children because I really want to have kids, and my biological clock is ticking and time is running out. I didn't have any of those pressures or considerations. It was very easy for me personally to just pick up and move. And I do think that did lead me personally to have a more successful adventure.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's definitely a consideration that, women often take when considering an assignment, right? And Rina, you have we're getting such amazing comments here. I'm going to share just a couple. Beverly Bell saying, that was an awesome story, Deb, and definitely shows how important our network are for supporting and also advancing. Couldn't agree more. Very cool story, Deb. Didn't realize connection with the expat now at Peloton. Yeah, that was a really, really nice story. So Rina, you have some data for us today to share about women and mobility. Throw some statistics at us, then we can start talking about it.
I have a lot of data, but I'm not going to throw it all at you guys.
Just a few, Rina, just a few.
I'm gonna let me just throw this. Let me throw this out. Female demand for assignment at all-time high. 71% of female millennials want to work outside their home country during their career, but only 20% of the current internationally mobile population are women. There's some food for thought. Only 20%. Why is that?
Right. Why is that? We're going to get into that. Do you think, based on some of these statistics, Rina, do you think the pandemic has changed? Do you think we're going back even further?
Look, I think the pandemic has changed in general for everyone, right? So I wouldn't really want to comment on this particular statistic and how the pandemic has changed it. I know that Debbie, you had a couple of examples, so I'm going to throw this at you to answer.
Yeah,
Can I just ask the audience as well? We want to make this very interactive. So if out there, we're getting loads and loads of comments coming in on LinkedIn, but in particular, as we get into this debate, has COVID impacted women in the workforce and women in the workforce generally? Please do shout out your thoughts and views and interact with us on the panel too.
Yeah, that would be great. And just, Gallia, in response to your question about has the pandemic had an impact, and I think it's absolutely yes. As Rina said, the pandemic's had an impact on all of us in different ways, but it's had a very near immediate impact on women's employment. A really interesting statistic from McKinsey is 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce or downshifting their career, which is just really incredible considering all of the strides women have made, in the workforce. And what's particularly interesting is while all women have been impacted, 3 major groups have experienced some of the largest challenges. And those groups include working mothers, women in senior management position, and Black females. So I think some really interesting kind of statistics.
That is incredible to share that those 3 groups of women have been impacted the most. Becky, what do you think the barriers are? What are some of the barriers?
Well, and just actually to build off a little bit of what Deb was saying and kind of those different categories of women, you do have a lot of women in low-paying jobs and face-to-face jobs that when COVID happened, their jobs were furloughed or totally gone. They were laid off, like jobs in retail and hospitality. Then you've got a lot of jobs that women hold where they were on the front line, essential workers, right? The healthcare, the grocery stores, and those women had to, deal with health concerns. Am I going to bring COVID home to my family? And if you have those women in childcare or elder care responsibility roles, that's an extra piece that was pretty tough to manage. And then you've got the women in the corporate world where they could do their jobs from home. And hopefully there was no furlough or layoff there. And then again, that additional complexity, if they have childcare, elder care, that sort of thing. In the United States, the childcare system already was inadequate, especially in a society where you have every adult in the household is working. And COVID really exacerbated that. So I think that's really been what's come to light from COVID are the difficulties that women face in managing and balancing all the different areas in their lives that they need to pay attention to. And actually, shameless plug, ADP will be holding a virtual summit called Women at Work 2021, and it's around commitment to equality in the workplace. That's on May 25th. So if any of you are interested in the topic, we'd love to have you.
And can I just ask, Becky, I've put it up there, but can I just ask, can they get details from the ADP website?
Yes, and it's on my LinkedIn. If you go there, I placed a link there this morning.
Okay, shameless plug.
I love it. It's so timely, I think, for this conversation. And Becky, I know you just found out about this kind of session. I'm just curious what, if you have any insight about ADP and, why they're doing this, kind of what's prompting it. Is just in reaction to kind of all the statistics we're just talking about, or I don't know if you can speak to that at all, but just speak.
Yeah. Well, and what I thought was interesting was I looked at the speaker list this morning. It was a lot of DE&I executives who would be joining and speaking. And I think it's about how do you get women back into the workplace? How can we properly support our female employees? There's a CEO of a working mother group who's joining. There's an anthropologist from ADP that's joining, but how do you make the workforce more equal and supportive of helping females from many different ways?
Love that. So awesome. Your organization is doing that.
Absolutely. We're getting some great comments here too. Sylvia Ehrlich is saying, I agree, the greatest impact has been on working mothers with preschool and school-age children. which I couldn't agree more. As a mother of two, it's been, it's certainly a challenge, to have, work in one ear and your child in the other ear asking you about homework questions. So I know that many moms out there have felt that impact over this past year. Moving on to a little bit about, bring it back to mobility. Becky, what do you think the barriers are for women to accepting assignments?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a broad question. So when I first think about it, it's like, well, there's many women in different types of scenarios. So let's think of a woman who has a partner, and maybe that partner works, right? Deb talked about her experience with her husband and his new company. If you have a partner that works, if you're not the sole breadwinner, then there might be some pretty deep conversations around, well, if we take this assignment and move somewhere else, how is that going to impact your partner's career? And that could be a very strong roadblock for some. If, again, you have a woman who's managing most of the child's care in the home, I can, again, speak to my personal experience. I've built up a very strong childcare network for my own children. The thought of leaving that and going somewhere where I don't know anyone and who's going to help me manage my kids while I'm at work, that would probably be my number one stressor for moving to a new place. And then even I know in my personal experience with past assignees, I've helped support move single mothers. And we've come into issues where, gee, I'd love to bring my nanny, or I'd love to bring my parent on assignment with me to help with the childcare. Well, I can't get them a visa. I can't accommodate that for you. And we've had some failed assignments as a result. But I think the last one, which is, I think, something really critical we need to talk about, is when companies are choosing who's going to go on assignment, they're going to look at the available talent pool. And if you haven't groomed women in a certain way, or they haven't been exposed to the same experiences as others, they might not be there in the candidate selection pool at the time a company's picking someone. So if you're looking at a candidate slate of 10 employees for this assignment and only one of them is a female, what's the odds it's going to go to a female? So I think that's really the critical need that we need to focus on and help provide more support for and create that talent pool.
I agree. This actually leads me to another question. So do you think, and this is for you, Deb and Becky, is there a female role model gap? Are there enough female role models with successful assignment experience? And what should companies be doing to increase the acceptance amongst women?
Yeah, I absolutely don't think there are enough female role models there. I just don't think organizations are investing enough, to send women on assignments. I think what we can do as mobility leaders is help our organizations be more intentional about their investment and about their candidate selection. So, I mean, Becky gave some good examples of if you don't have a good pool, you don't have enough of, you don't have enough to select from. But I think we can really help our organizations, our leaders be more intentional about building bigger pools that include females. But that has to be really intentional. And I think there also has to be like goal setting. And we're seeing a lot of organizations today kind of in the diversity space set really tangible goals about what they're committing to hire in terms of underrepresented groups. So we're seeing that, and they're making those statements publicly about what those underrepresented groups are and what their goals are. I would envision that we could, implement the same type of model in mobility, that we're setting intentional goals about diversity within our workforce, specifically gender diversity. I think as mobility leaders, we can also really help our organizations understand what diversity in the workforce, in the mobile workforce, looks like today, help set those goals and also track progress. I have kind of a future vision that I would love to get to a point where we are tracking statistics such as retention, the velocity of promotion, overall performance between the different segments of our mobile workforce. I think it'd be really fascinating to have data on, are women performing higher than men? Are men performing higher than women? Are men getting promoted, faster than women? Are we retaining, males? All of that data I think would be really insightful and helpful. Just a few thoughts there. Becky, I think you had some additional kind of insights you wanted to share.
Yeah, and I agree, Deb, with everything that you said. You know, I also think sitting in this corporate global mobility seat, how can we tactically help these women be successful in their assignments and be incentivized to accept these assignments? And again, thinking about what are the different types of women that we move. I've moved younger women who have never lived outside of their home country, single, no kids, and what are their concerns? What are they thinking about? And a lot of times it's things like safety and security. Am I living in a safe neighborhood? Do I need to live in a house with bars on my window? I'm nervous about somebody breaking in. Where you're going, do I need a car and driver? So are we giving them that type of support? Again, going back to that childcare issue, should we be providing maybe a cash allowance to help with additional childcare needs if you know they don't have school or whatever their challenges might be there? More destination services support to help them source the right childcare help that they need in order to, again, what's the point? We want people to be successful in their roles, right? We want them to be focused on work and make sure that the family's supported. So what's the additional support we need since, again, these women are taking on these primary caretaker responsibilities? And then that other piece around if they're moving with a partner. I have seen a lot of assignments. Originally, they were slated to be a long-term assignment, but and it was a woman that was a candidate for the role, but her spouse did not want to give up the career in the home country, and it's something they couldn't do in the host country. So it ended up turning into a commuting assignment or an extended business traveler so that the spouse could or partner could stay back home and continue their career and their job. So are we going to see more of those types of arrangements to accommodate that? Or similarly, do you provide some kind of loss for spousal income? I know a lot of companies have had that before. It's kind of phased out a bit. Or are you going to see that trend coming back? So lots of different ways that we can be flexible in our policies to help support.
I agree. That is, you know, that there are options. There's always options of making it work, right? Elizabeth, we're getting some great comments again. Elizabeth Presner-Stolke said there's a huge female role model gap. Many of us didn't have them growing up, and there is still a lack of representation around the business world. That's a really interesting comment. You know, when I think back, this is for the panel, can you think of one role model, female in your whole career, that you can say, wow, you know, that person helped me in my journey?
I can definitely, and the person that hired me at ADP, Rebecca Kirschbaum, she had been in this role about 21 years. She's retired now. She became my mentor. I still talk to her now and get great advice from her. And I do think there is a different perspective. I think anyone can be a mentor to somebody else, male or female. There is a different perspective if you're a female with a female mentor, because they might have a different understanding about your life journey and different impacts in the marketplace. But anyone can be a mentor to anyone else. You can get a great beneficial relationship out of it. But Rebecca was one that was very helpful for me.
You know, coming from my family, expat, military, moved around the world. I think my family was, you know, the biggest role model in my life. You know, to have me right after the university, go straight to Germany for 25 years. So, you know, I think it's also the way you grow up. You know, it's important as, you know, a mother, you know, to give your children that exposure to international.
Yes, totally agree. I have to do a special shout out to a very dear friend here in Portland. Everyone knows Vinny, but I love that he just said in the comments that he's watching this with his daughter. Hey, Kaylee. Hi, sweetie. Yes, love that. I totally agree. Exposing our children to these international experiences. I was so fortunate to be able to do that with my kids. They were, like I said, 10 and 8 when we moved to Luxembourg, but exposing our children to international opportunities, I think, really helps kind of build that global mindset as well, too.
That's so true. This is wonderful. We're getting such amazing comments here. Marilee Bratt saying, agree, Deb, organizations need to intentional, I lost her comment there, but here we go. Need to set intentional goals for women expat assignments and building the talent pool. I know my previous organization has this the focus now. So really it looks like the conversation is taking place, and that's great. I do have one One final question for the panel. We have a large number of young women entering the workforce today, in larger number than previous generations. What advice would you give them as they enter the corporate world or looking for a role in mobility? And I'll start with Rina.
I think, first of all, I think organizations should promote, women who've been on assignments. I think that, sometimes, we just don't know, Does everybody know, Debbie, at Nike or at Peloton that you were in the UK, that you were on an assignment? Debbie, in your organization, do they know that you were an expat? I think, that promotion is important. So the young women can, latch on, and say, hey, Debbie, Rina, Becky, I heard you were on an assignment. How was it? What was your experience? So I think, promoting that within the organization is number one. The advice that I would give is really, joining events, joining webinars within the organization. If there's a program, to ask questions, so to really look within the organization and outside of the organization, networking, to find somebody that you can latch onto and ask them about their experience. Why do you speak so many languages, Rina? Where have you lived? How was it for you? Right? So that would be my advice. And that's the advice that I give to my students that I teach as well.
It's funny that you said that, Rina, about do people know that I've been, on a kind of an assignment, and I probably don't promote it as much. However, as you notice in my background, I do have this Luxembourg photo, and people tend to ask questions about it because some people haven't even ever heard of Luxembourg. So I love chatting about it if someone asks, but I love that you just promote that experience. I think it's really important. I would just add kind of a few additional comments to what Rina has already shared. I 100% agree with, +1 on all of your comments, Rina. A couple of other things we've talked about, having a mentor, and agree, Becky, you said, I think male or female. I think having a female mentor, though, is really kind of especially insightful kind of in our kind of world today. Another thing I'd recommend is to join your organization's kind of affinity group, or now in some organizations are called employee resource group. At Peloton, we have one called the Women's Alliance. So I'm really excited. I've already joined, really excited to get kind of involved in that. As Rina mentioned, network with other females in our industry. There are so many amazing women. Several of you who are, I'm with on this panel today, who I love and adore. There's also groups, and I have to call out kind of a local group that I've kind of participated in. It's called Who Runs the Mobility World Girls. And it is Mary LaRocca Corrales and Katie Rudnick that have started that group. And it's just really about empowering women and, joining together and having just really kind of inspirational conversations. The other thing I think we have to do is just lift other women up every chance we get. There's so many other things that are pressing us down. We have to lift each other up. And honestly, it makes me kind of emotional just thinking about it, because I feel like I have had so many women that have helped lift me up, and that just, inspire me every day, and how much confidence and empowerment that gives me. The other thing I would say is, I've gotten a lot of feedback throughout my career that I'm bossy, I'm emotional, etc. And I think that those are labels that we oftentimes give to women, to kind of, put women down. And I would say, take that as a compliment. If you're bossy, I would really say you have strong leadership skills. And if someone tells you you're emotional, I would pivot that to say you probably have a really high emotional intelligence. So just don't let those labels kind of get you down, because I think those we hear and see those kind of often, I think, in the workplace, especially. I know I sure as heck have. So
that's very inspiring, Deb. Thank you for that. Becky, what advice would you give?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with everything that's already been said, and definitely do want to give a special shout out to all of our male allies as well, right? We all need to work together to lift each other up. But interesting about the networking, and I'd say, okay, yeah, we work specifically in mobility. Make sure you network within the mobility groups, but also it's really critical to network wherever you can. Right, I got my job at Newscorp, where I met Rina, because my neighbor who worked in human resources told me about the job. and I applied for it. So you never know what connections you'll make where, be it community groups, be it if you have children with parents of their friends, things like that. Look for networking opportunities wherever you can. Something Rina touched on, constantly learn. You need to constantly educate yourself. Our industry is changes every day. You can learn something from anyone. You know, the most junior person at the household goods shipping company, I want to talk to them because they're on the ground. They see it every day. I can learn from them. I can learn from the CEO of a technology startup. Talk to everyone. Be humble. And the other thing, just specifically thinking about women, and not to stereotype or generalize, but I'm guilty of this myself. I think a lot of times when women are looking at new roles or promotions, you might look at the job qualifications and say, gee, there's 10 things on here that I need to be qualified for in order to get the job. I only qualify for about 7 of them. I'm underqualified. I probably shouldn't go for this role. They're not going to give it to me. Whereas, you know, others may come in with another attitude and say, oh, I qualify for 7 out of 10 on here. That's great. I'm going to be great for this job. Those other 3 things, I'll just learn when I get there. I'll be just fine. I think women in general need to go in with more confidence and more of that attitude of, hey, I'm a really good fit for this. I'm going to give this a shot and kind of get over that hurdle and go for those roles, go for those stretch assignments where you think I might not be a good fit, actually great fit. And it'll open up a world of opportunity.
Right. We tend to be hard on ourselves at times, right? When we're looking at those things. Yeah, I would agree. That is a very powerful message. We're getting, we're getting so much love out there. Such amazing comments. We have Devika, who said, most of my role models have been women, senior immigration partners in the beginning of my career. I learned so much from them. I think it's so important what you said to Becky, that role models can be male and female. And it's great to have all of that support. We're coming up on looking at some other comments. Let's see what else we have. Never worry about the negative. Concentrate on what's positive.
So let me just jump in real quick. I want to give a shout out to PwC for their Women in Mobility group that Vicky and I have joined many times. Amazing event, and I can't wait till Debbie's in New York so she can join these events with us as well. And I just want to add on here, look, I can honestly, transparently say, that I have a relationship with each one of these women on this panel. And there's never, there's never jealousy, there's never competition, right? Through COVID, if I needed advice, call up Debbie, Becky, or Gallia. It's really, I can honestly say, women supporting each other. That's why we were able to get this panel together and be on here together. So I think it's really important also, I think, Debbie, you said that, to really lift each other up and be there for each other and, forget about all this competition and all that stuff. So, I just want to thank you guys for being great mentors to me and for being great friends as well.
Thank you, Rina.
Thank you for that, Rina. We're pretty much out of time, but what I do want to do is to thank our panel, to thank Rina, to thank Debbie, and to thank Becky. You've been absolutely amazing. And Gallia, you've just done an awesome job at moderating. And it's just been, and the love that I've been seeing out there, just looking at this comment from Sarah Judy, such an incredible panel. Love hearing everyone's stories. It's so inspiring. Thank you for the honest conversation. I mean, this is just the start. I'm sure we're going to have many conversations like this in the future. We had a record number of people on the show today. It's just been awesome hearing all the comments and all the love and all the support out there. Let me just bring in our other guests. So I'll bring in Pat and Julia and Matt. So the team's all here. Actually, no, I don't have Matt. Matt is not there. We have Matt's mother's house. Anyway.
Brian, can I just say, you do this all the time, so you're probably used to it, but I am like overwhelmed by all of these comments. I mean, trying to just watch what amazing, this support, like, wow. Talk about lifting each other up. Like, this is proof right here. I love this. Thank you, everybody who's listening and watching us today.
Yeah, I've done conferences, professionally for I don't know, over 15 years, and I've never seen a format as interactive and as engaging as this View from the Top LinkedIn Live. Oh, here comes Matt. No, he doesn't. Okay, so we're going to get him on stage. We do have Matt as we take our goodbyes. So the team is all together, and we say goodbye to the audience. We will be back next week with Benevo Bites, when we're going to be talking about the future of mobility, and we're going to be opening our crystal ball or our silicon ball to see what the future holds. And then the week after that, really big one, definitely put it in your calendar. That's going to be the big reveal of the top 100 service providers in the world. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye from all of us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.